Hello and welcome to another episode of cloudThing Answers. Today we're discussing testing and quality assurance. So I am joined by Emma Cowley, our Head of Testing.
Hi.
Hello Emma.
Hiya.
How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Very happy to be on camera, aren't you?
Absolutely.
So just for the benefit of everybody watching, just explain a little bit about your background in testing and what you do day to day at cloudThing.
Yeah, well, I've been in testing now for about 16 years, over 16 years. So started off, as a junior tester, rising to senior tester, test manager, and now head of testing here at cloudThing. And I've got a range of experience, in terms of functional testing, non-functional testing, and leading that sort of testing as well. So what I spend most of my time here doing is devising test strategies, talking to clients about their requirements, talking to the team, making sure they're on track, they're doing they're working to the standards that we've set.
Okay, so I guess obviously testing is hugely important, and in any software development company you would hope. But what would you say are the main reasons why testing is so vital to software development or dynamics? We do it in basically anything we deliver to a client. We test.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm a head test, so I'm always going to say it's massively important. But I think the most critical thing to think about is that humans are fallible. We all make mistakes.
I don't.
And some mistakes that we make are small mistakes, and they have very, very little impact. And there are some mistakes that you can make that potentially have big detrimental impacts. So you think about sort of business reputation, there may be security issues, and potentially, depending on what you're actually developing, there's loss of life as well. So, there are some fundamental things. And you ask yourself, well, what can we do about them? How do we go about mitigating them? And one of those key things that you could do is you go, right, okay, in the software development world, get your developer to do his own testing. And that's okay to a point, because what they're actually doing is verifying that their code is of a good standard, it actually works. And that's where your QA team come in, because what you've got is a team of independent, dedicated testers who have a great understanding of test techniques and test tools that they can use for non-functional and functional testing to get to the heart of those issues and to be able to explore them and prioritise them for the team. Because of course our primary role is to be able to have timely, accurate information that we can give to our stakeholders, whether it be internal or external, for them to make the best decisions that they can. It's really true, and I know it's not the same, but obviously with my work when I write content and things like that, I'll proofread my own stuff, and I'm like, yep, that's fine, but you're always biased, I suppose. If you created it, you unintentionally see what you want to see, and you test what you want to test, not what's really there. I remember writing essays at college, at university, and you skim read them and you find some issues, don't you? But you get a person with fresh eyes on that, and that's when either you're going to pick holes in arguments, or there are issues with grammar. It's all sorts of things that person with fresh eyes will come in and just go, right, that's wrong, well, that's wrong, that's okay. It's that we give as independent testers.
And I suppose that, like you said, even if there's a 1 in 100 chance of something happening, and that being a really difficult thing to break it in terms of software, that's actually quite easy to happen. When we've got millions of people using the software, it can't. Even if you say there's 1 in a million chance of that happening, that's not good enough. I suppose it needs to be. You've got to close all the loops.
That's right. And it depends what those risks are that you're exposed to. What's the likelihood and what's the impact of those risks?
Which brings us nicely on to the next question. So I suppose the problem in testing is you can't test all the things all the time all the same standards. So what are our principles, processes, and that sort of stuff to make sure that the right things are tested, and how we go about that?
Okay, so I think the best place to start is one of our solution principles. If it isn't tested, it doesn't work. So that forms our sort of raison d'etre. And for me, that boils down to 3 key objectives. So what do we do? What are we really about? We're about proving that customer requirements are being satisfied. We're about preventing and detecting defects. And we're about, like I said earlier, making all of that information, timely, accurate information back to our decision makers. And that's what primarily we're about. So how do we go about, how does that sort of manifest itself? So the test strategy is really, really crucial to everything that we do, and devising something which makes sense for every single project and every single client that we're working for. So there's no one size fits all test strategy. They're absolutely tailor-made for every project we're working on. And we'll be thinking about the technologies that we're working with. What is the essence of the project? What are the core functional requirements, non-functional requirements? What are the integration points, in terms of the new architecture and the incumbent architecture as well? What sort of other things are you thinking about? There's, could you actually could you leverage the benefits of test automation? If you're going to go that way, what is the scope of that test automation? Are you actually going to do something just key automation, or is it going to be a substantial piece? Because it all makes a difference. Yeah. We'll be putting our test strategy together with all of these things in mind, and also one of those other key things is risk. So we'll be going to our clients and saying, right, okay, we have a fair understanding of what we think the risks are that you're potentially going to be exposed to. And we have a discussion around that, and risks come in lots of different shapes and sizes. So you could have reputational, financial, regulatory, technical, operational risks. And once we've identified those risks, we can start talking to the client, okay, what is like I said earlier, what is the probability of those, and what is the impact? And if you've got low impact, low probability, possibly you don't do anything about it, and there may be some mitigations that you do, but actually as you get higher towards higher likelihood and higher impact, what you're looking at from us to do is to try and devise a test strategy that meets that tries to mitigate that risk.
So I suppose it's almost, we build the strategy, it's as bespoke as the actual whatever we're building itself. Absolutely. I suppose the only constants are risk for businesses. The technologies we use change all the time.
Yeah.
There's some continuous ones, but I suppose it's more identify the risks and then build the test strategy based on that, rather than, it's in this technology, so we'll just test it like that, because that's how we always test it.
Absolutely. And all of that you use to inform the test strategy. So what you're doing then, okay, you understand all the things that I've talked about previously. You go, right, okay, so what are we going to do about it? And there are certain test phases. You go, right, okay, we know we've got some security, so let's do some security testing, let's do some vulnerability scanning, let's do some penetration testing. You've got some load testing requirements. Okay, exactly what are those requirements? What's the scope of that? What does it look like? So we'll have a load test phase. The client might be really, really keen on a really fabulous user experience, because potentially this is going to be used by millions of people. That's their aspiration, so it's got to be really, really slick. So that defines what we're going to be doing. Those are sort of non-functional things. But also we're going to be looking at the functional, making sure that it actually works, the user stories meet those requirements. And we've got all this sort of thing that we're thinking about, and that gets defined in that test strategy.
So once you've got the strategy and it's defined, how does testing work in practice? So obviously, we're very agile in how we build stuff, and stories can move in and out. Do we test within the sprints, or is it the development finishes and then we test it and then it goes back? How does that work?
So your QA team are absolutely embedded within the team, and they're key to that team. We do all of our testing as far as it's possible within that sprint. That's always our ambition, to be able to write our test cases, write really well defined test cases, do that execution as soon as that code gets delivered to us. As soon as we've got done that test execution, then we're raising defects, and getting those fixes back and retesting them. That the aim and the ambition is always to test within a sprint, because that gives us the best chance of giving quick feedback into our development team.
Okay, so it's baked into the sprint. It kind of starts dev, and then more test towards the end of
Absolutely,
the
yes,
sprint.
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay, so I think that covers a lot of it. So what would you say makes a good QA professional?
Right, there are some key things here. A great communicator is one of them, because there's a couple of things in that. So what you want is a great listener. You want someone who's going to listen to the client and understand exactly what they want from their product, what they're looking for from this particular feature, what they're looking for from the epic, what they're looking for holistically. Also need to be listening really hard to what the developers are saying to you, because if you've got a developer and you're hearing people say, oh, this is really quite difficult, I'm spending a bit more time than I expected on this, you're likely to find issues with that, because potentially that's where you zone in and you start looking. There's also they're good listeners, but also you need to be a very good verbal communicator, and there are a couple of things here. So you've got some developers who fundamentally you're probably saying your code is rubbish, there are issues here and here and here. There are diplomatic ways you need to go about that, because you need that team to be gelling well. So you need a person that can tell somebody they've got issues, or their code has issues, their baby has issues, and also to do that in a good way to keep the rapport with the team. And you also need to be able to have the confidence to go, do you know what, I've spent the last couple of sprints on this piece of work and the quality is just not right. Guys, we need to sit back and look at this and do something about it. And that's absolutely what we want from our QA, someone who's got the guts to say to the team, no, it's not right, let's look at this again. So communication is a really, really big one. Another important one is a tester's sixth sense. We need people who are going to sniff out defects, and this is what great test analysts do. They go, right, okay, I think there's an issue over there, and it may not be a test case, but you do some exploratory tests and you go root out that issue, and great test analysts can do that. What other sorts of things? There's prioritisation, because as you said right at the beginning, you could do you could plan out your tests and go, I want to test that and that and that, but actually in the end you don't have the time to be able to do that, and every tester will know that we don't have the time to do the work that we really, really want to do. So your tester's going to go, right, okay, that's where the risk is, that's how I'm going to prioritise it, this is where I need to focus, because I know that I need to do the most focused testing I can on the most critical areas first, to find those defects, to report them back to the team. So there's a prioritisation angle. But I think lastly, and probably the most important thing, it's an absolute passion for quality, and it's a passion for delivering fab software to our clients.
Yeah, it's the same passion as I suppose the developers themselves, but a different skill set.
Yeah.
I hadn't really considered a lot of that, really. I mean, and so much of it is communication, and I suppose being impartial, because they work with the developers every day, and it must be quite easy to be like, well, he's good, so I don't need to worry about him. But actually, you do. If he's, if he or she is stressed and they've got too much to do, and they're going to find issues. And
let's face it, like we said right at the beginning of this, humans are fallible. We all make mistakes, don't we? However good you are, there are always going to be issues that creep in.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. Thank you. So I hope that was useful for everybody. That is how we do testing at cloudThing. Thanks very much for watching.
Thank you.
Cheers.